Mongoose Jake here with a new modding video, this time featuring the Frantic Fury, which is of course an Adventure Force blaster made by Busby Toys. Now, everybody knows my love of Busby. They have great internals, and more or less they have pretty good shells, but the internals are definitely their strong point. They feature a plunger tube on most of the blasters that's equivalent to an expanded plunger tube for a Nerf Retaliator or blaster of that style, and very, very readily respond to pretty simple mods. In this case, of course, I'm going with a brass breech, and it is of a slightly modified version of my Mongoose Jake Easy Breech. And yeah, it kind of feels silly calling something after my own username here, but I did an Easy Breech, but that has an extended feeding lip that is actually bent up into the plastic. Now it's a 17/32 brass breech that is cut in a slight excess of the length of a dart. So all you do to do it is to take a dart, and I do actually have a video specifically on my breech design. Take a piece of brass a bit longer than the length of a dart. This one actually extends all the way back to 1/4 inch shy of the actual plunger tube itself, and you flare out the end, and that's it. It's very simple. 17/32 brass. You drill this out with, I do a 17/32 drill bit, powering it in reverse, going slowly, being careful to not overheat the plastic, but go in reverse so it doesn't shred the plastic either. Go slow in reverse, and then hand file to remove any excess plastic, and then press fit the brass in. There's no epoxy or anything. By press fitting, it's secure, and it offers a very, very greatly improved seal. So even though it's an open breech design, meaning as far as blaster terms, there is no seal to a barrel. I don't necessarily need that in this setting that this blaster is intended for, and that's where you go look for your mods. Me, I am pretty much 150 feet per second and under. I have at least 3 or 4 blasters that'll hit 200 feet per second or a little over. That's good enough for me. Most of my blasters, I need them to be in around the 130 to 150 feet per second range for the events that I want to use them for. My local events, or some that I want to attend this coming year. This one, as it's intended, should hit around that range. We'll try it out here once we get it together. Okay, moving on, a couple of key notes. I've removed the locks, and you need to take care with the dart tooth. I actually went and did a specific video on the Busby dart tooth, but you need to make sure the torsion spring is down in and catches the tab, and that you lock this down, because that is the dart tooth for Busby. I'll go ahead and actuate it a couple times here. See, it's very simple. It relies on the torsion spring to pull the dart tooth down. Don't lose that, or your dart tooth won't function properly, and then you'll have to hunt up a proper torsion spring. And then the dart guide here. What this does is it prevents a dart from coming out of the top of the magazine and pushing up so far that it snags on the breech. Very nice little extra design that Busby does that other brands do not. And outside of a true sealed breech, this definitely improves feeding, because Busby blasters tend to jam a lot less than Nerf brand when we're talking about stock breeches. So with that done, let's move on to actually getting this thing assembled. I'll be able to move fairly quick because I've done all of this ahead off camera. I've done my typical hot glue cap here. Well, looks like Whiskers, the shop cat's been on the workbench, but as you can see, there is actually a cap of hot glue that goes just slightly humped up. It gets rid of the dead space that's in the center of Busby plunger heads, and also offers a cushion if this were to impact at the end of the plunger tube. I put 3 wraps of electrical tape underneath the O-ring, resealed it, and now it has a very nice seal. You test that by placing it in the plunger tube, and then you want to make sure that the O-ring is contacting evenly, but not so much that it's requiring a lot of force. Too much force, I've seen new modders say that they've done all the proper mods, they put in a bigger spring, and they're either not getting very good performance like they would expect, you know, like they want to see that Nerf 70 feet per second go up to 120, they're actually only gaining like 5 or 10 feet per second, or in some cases, I've heard people say that they got worse performance. Generally, you can go down to either a dry plunger tube, or they put too many wraps of tape on their O-ring, and all of a sudden now it's creating friction. So definitely test that out before reassembling your blaster. And I can feel it starts to catch right here. And the reason why it catches there, at that part of the stroke, is that plunger tubes are not a straight cylinder typically. At least not the stock ones. They actually come tapered. They go, if you could picture, I'm going to exaggerate it. Let's spin this around to where I can line it up. If you could picture, it starts out real wide and then narrows. Of course, I am highly over-exaggerating that, but that is what happens in that process. Now, I'm going to use a NF Strike 8.2 kilogram retaliator spring. Either Busby's just pure genius in their design, or it's pure luck. Don't know, but ever since they've updated their blasters back in about 2015 or so, retaliator springs are almost a drop-in replacement. I mean, the stock spring has, as you can see there, if I line it up, it's got a little extra length to it. No big deal. We're going from what's probably about a, this is a rough estimate. This is probably a 3.5 kilogram spring at best, going to an 8.2. So even if it uses a little bit of length, as long as we don't have spring rattle, I don't care. Spring rattle, of course, being where at full closed position, that your spring actually has so much play in it that as you're running around with the blaster, you actually hear the spring shaking. More an annoyance, not really a hindrance. I will go ahead and get this placed back in real quick. So now our screw rest is in place. Now I need to make sure I get the catch. And the Frantic Fury catch is very similar to other Busby catches, but it has a slight difference in that it is a multi-piece unit. You have this little piece that has a spring inside. There, as the camera focuses in, has a spring inside of that. This is actually the rest that it clamps it down. It has a tab inside of it, as you can see there. That tab needs to line up inside there, and then you compress the spring a little bit. And that's how it works. Now, of course, that only goes one way. This little tab faces to the rear of the shell, and then you take that, and that inserts into the back of the spring rest, and there is a post that it goes over. I've got it all lined up. I'm going to get a screw going down into there, and we will tighten it on down. So there we are. Now I can showcase that to you here. We got our rod that goes to the dart tooth. We're going to make sure that lines up with the trigger there. And the trigger has to be placed into a little trough. And it actually catches and activates the catch. Like so. Very simple. Works quite effectively. Make sure the rod's placed properly. There we go. Okay, so everything grabbed and put back together. Here is your internal layout. And yes, I'll have to keep my hand in the way there, because the dart guide is putting pressure on the breech, as well as the new 8.2 kilogram spring. So we'll go over it real quick. Full barrel back in place. Dart tooth on this rod with the torsion spring installed on the bottom, and the dart tooth, we'll say actuating piece. Here underneath a washer, a screw with a built-in washer. The rod has to be first looped into the dart tooth actuator, and then it routes back over the top of the priming bar, as you can see there. goes over the top of it, rides back to the trigger, and then you hook it in here. The trigger goes underneath the catch, has a little trough it sits in, goes underneath the catch, and the catch has two pieces with that interlocking tab that has to pre-compress the spring, and then this gets screwed down here after you have screwed down the actual spring rest, the main spring. And again, takes retaliator springs, very easy to find. And then of course I've got my brass already in there, so I'm going to button this up and we'll come back. Okay, now I got it back together, and I did have to make a change in the intermission here. This is, of course, you're getting to see for the first time the actual Hydrodip. Let's turn our lights off to the side so there's not so much glare. Here we are. Much better there. I gotta get my LED lights off to the side, and there we are. You can see that multicolor Hydrodip along with the gray panels and some of the black pieces left. Now I've cured the stock issue by quite simply epoxying and wrapping electrical tape. That locked it in, got rid of all that sway, and actually made it a secure stock. And I did have to make a change. I was going to run the 8.2 kilogram spring, but I had a nagging suspicion in the back of my mind that it was going to be too much for the priming rod, and it was. That priming rod has a lot of flex to it, especially if you're just trying to test it like I was without a magazine in. A lot of flex in there, and I did have to indeed pull that out and throw a standard 7 kilogram in. And now it's able to catch reliably. So let's go ahead and fire off a few shots. I only got one to catch, and it was a doozy on the 8 kilogram. But we're going to go ahead and try this. We've got 130.2. There we are. And that was Adventure Force Waffle. Let's go with a Busby Precise Pro. No, actually that was a Nerf Elite. Got 109.3. So we're looking at, so far, 110, 130, a couple of misreads, and a 115. 277.4 is not going to be viable, and man, I got some bad accuracy. Let's do this again here. 119.9. I'll let you go ahead and read that. $109.6. Okay, so we're going between 110 to 130. Got one shot left. Let's slap that thing back in. Yep, I got 104.4. So again, roughly between 110 to 130, which is about what I expect off of a Busby blaster with a 7 kilogram spring. That's, well, local event and HVZ friendly, and that's basically what I was going for. All that done and said, it looks like I've got a worthy HVZ or local event type blaster, shooting between 110 to 130 feet per second. So you'd say roughly you could count on a 115 velocity and 115, 120, and of course, I absolutely love the color scheme here. The blue, gray, white, and black. So, I'm trying to make sure that's coming up here on the camera. Let's look real close there. There we go. Going through and that, getting that marbling in there. Flip it over. Yeah, I absolutely love the color scheme on this. The blue, white, black, gray is only second to me as far as I love the black, orange, and white. Those kind of like my color schemes. I have about 3, along with green, white, and black. But the blue, white, gray, black, or the orange, white, and black, and then the green, gray, and black, and white. I love the marbling. This thing actually is a really good shell. But as it is, again, a local blaster, HVZ level blaster. I think this would be fun to use. On a 7 kilogram spring, it catches very smoothly, very nicely. And 110 feet per second is good enough. So, I hope you enjoyed this. And thanks for watching.